Problem, supporters of Damned in the USA, a British documentary on censorship in the arts, may go ahead with plans to screen the controversial film.
How you doing, folks? This looks like a good place to talk. Gotta keep it down. I'm working underground, you know. I'm in this film and it's banned. The film you're about to see is called Damned in the USA. My name is Jimmy Tingle. I'm in the film.
Hello from Hollywood and welcome to Showbiz Today.
I was performing at the Edinburgh Arts Festival in Scotland in 1990. I was approached by some producers who were interested in doing a documentary on censorship in America. I said, sure. We come to the States, we film the documentary, they bring it back, they make a film, we try to show it in the States, and next thing I know, we're banned.
A controversial film on censorship had a unique showing tonight at Webster University.
It was the film's first viewing in America since its New York debut in September. As News Channel 5's Julie Beard reports from the newsroom, after that first showing, the film was slapped with a $2 million lawsuit. Julie?
Look, I have a lot of dough, but I didn't make half of that on this one film, okay?
Damned in the USA was made by British filmmaker Paul Ewell. In the film, he interviewed Reverend Donald Wildman of the American Family Association, a group that wants to stamp out obscenity. Wildman sued Ewell reportedly over the way the film was edited. The filmmaker says the lawsuit is a form of censorship itself.
1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Lou Reed. Donald Wildman was damned in the USA. Tried to get Channel 4 to pay and pay. A hustle here and a hustle there. Mississippi was the place where he thought, hey, I'll take a walk on the legal side. I said, hey, I'll take a walk on the wild side. Righteous Donald bought the best lawyers money could buy. At the deposition, he looked them in the eye. A little lie here, a little lie there. He thought Mississippi was the place where he could, hey, take a walk on the wild side. He thought a hometown judge would rule on his side. The fundamentalist went sue, 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 sue. The fundamentalist went sue, 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 and they lost.
It's just so filthy that I don't want anyone thinking that I myself would be associated with it knowingly.
I hope you'll enjoy this film because it took a lot of time, money, and energy to be able to show it. But thank goodness we have the First Amendment.
And they lost.
By the way, the 11 p.m. showing tonight is all filled up, so if you don't have a ticket, don't bother going.
It's an outrage, and we ought to terminate the National Endowment for the Arts because there will be no end to this argument and controversy over what is art and what isn't.
We're talking about these sleazeballs who have been getting money from the NEA under the pretext of having produced something that they call art.
They not only see this garbage, you can say, well, we didn't know that he'd engage in this kind of filth. But then they see fit to distribute it throughout the nation.
Times have changed, and we've often rewound the clock since the Puritans got a shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. If today any shock they should try to stem, Instead of landing on Plymouth Rock would land on them. In olden days, a glimpse of stockings was looked on as something shocking. Now, heaven knows, anything goes. Good authors, too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, writing prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's
Mr. Jimmy Tingle, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it for him.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimmy Tingle, and that is my real name, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. I hope everybody here enjoys music and American politics, because I have very few jokes. Well, I suppose my first introduction to any sort of politics was in January of 1961. And at the time, John F. Kennedy was becoming the 35th president of the United States of America. And my mother, she gathered us around the television set, and we watched his inauguration speech, and he talked about, I have miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep, and ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. I like that. Then I didn't hear from JFK for 3 years because I was only 5 years old. It wasn't like I was following the administration. The next time I heard from Mr. Kennedy, I was 8 years old. I was in the 3rd grade, and the grammar school principal, Mr. Foley, came over the loudspeaker, his voice cracking with emotion. Boys and girls, President Kennedy has been shot today in Dallas, Texas. School will be dismissed early. And the whole nation mourned, and the whole world mourned, really, because the man stood for something. He stood for hopes, and he stood for dreams. He had a sense of vision. He had a sense of destiny. And I guess we stayed out of school about a week, I suppose it was.
And now, recipe for repression. First, stir up fears about an uncertain future. Then, heat with accusations of obscenity. Make sure to silence artists and others whose views are controversial. Serve immediately. For our next course, government issue morality. It's a long way from apple pie.
Brad, are you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Americans. I'm your host, Don Wildman.
And I'm your co-host, Tim Wildman, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Issues and Action.
Today we've got, Tim, good news and bad news. Not a whole lot of bad news, but some. And it relates to pornography. Again, there's another victim of pornography. There's an article that...
Claiming his message reaches 150,000 churches with 80 to 100 million members, the Reverend Wildman wants NBC to downplay the use of drugs, diminish violence, withdraw advertising for feminine hygiene products, avoid profanity, and depict minorities at the same ratio as they exist in society.
The use of sex as a part of the plot should be downplayed. New programs dealing with sex should present sex from the Judeo-Christian perspective. Adultery, fornication, and sexual permissiveness should clearly be presented as being wrong and destructive family relationship and non-approved behavior.
Well, son, let's go settle the score with some cops.
I've got the reports. What you watching?
Watching Hunter.
What you found? We would be looking for sex, violence, profanity, and how Christians are depicted.
But he lapses into a plea to God.
Is this the one who wanted to kill God help him
Wants
kill.
God to help him kill the man who killed his wife. That's it.
Pretty typical portrayal of Christians, right?
Right.
All right, I've got General Motors, I got Pillsbury. The media has become a real pervasive and persuasive influence. The media, for instance, can't tell you what to think, but they can certainly tell you what to think about. Profanity, violence and profanity. That's what's his name? The black
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy. I was a minister and enjoyed being a minister and would prefer to still be a parish minister. We started the AFA dealing with sex and violence on television because that's what we thought we were dealing with. Over a period of years, as we saw the whole broad picture, then we realized that really we're not talking about sex and violence on television. Really what we're talking about is a struggle for the very heart and soul of civilization.
Good morning, American Family Association. Hi, how are you this morning? All right, I'll be happy to connect you with Ms.
We operate
Price.
on about $6 million a year. 99% of that is $15, $20 gifts. The computer has nearly 700,000 names.
It's just a contribution. It says Christmas gift in Jesus' name. A lot of times people will put on their check, but they don't send anything back with it, specifying where they want it to go, or if they want it, for a certain cause or something, they'll put that on there.
So what we're trying to do is to affect those influences that affect the family. Television, pornography, abortion, in some cases, government support of pornography, as with the National Endowment for the Arts.
I mean, historically, a lot of these communist countries have put, like, political poets in jail. I'm saying poets? Excuse me, you're a nation, you feel threatened by poetry? I mean, we have a lot of problems in the States. When's the last time anybody in this room was, like, jumped by poets? You know, I'm not going down to Greenwich Village. What are you, nuts? There's poets down there. They're insane. They have pens with feathers coming out of them. They wear berets. They jump out of the bushes when you're not looking. My love is like a red, red rose. Poets. I mean, Czechoslovakia put a jazz band in jail. Jazz. That's enough. Get in, listen.
I was looking through the mail one day, and there was a letter to the editor. It was a 1-inch letter talking about a photograph of Christ submerged in urine on display at the local art exhibit. And this was in Richmond, Virginia.
Here's a picture. The title, Piss Christ. Incredible.
The only reaction that I ever recall about Piss Christ initially was when I first showed it at Stuck's Gallery. This woman came up to me, a reverend's wife, and she said to me, you know, when it comes to religion, my husband and I don't agree about anything, but we were both very moved by your picture. And that was the only reaction I ever got over Piss Christ until Donald Wildman came into the picture.
We had our person, our chapter in Richmond, go down and check it out because I didn't believe it. And indeed, it was exactly what it said it was. So we took that photograph and sent it to the congressmen and senators. It actually started because of one little bitty letter to the editor. The whole controversy.
What a disgrace.
I think that his submersion of Christ in urine was an affront to believing Christians. He's taken the person who's the most important centerpiece in our whole life and submerged it in urine. Let's suppose, for instance, that he had put Martin Luther King in urine and named it, I'm not going to use the term, but the street term for urine, King. Or let's suppose he'd taken the Star of David and submerged that in urine and put it on display. How would the Jews feel? Same thing.
I mean, the thing with Piss Christ that really blew me away was, you know, all this talk about anti-Christian bigotry. And I thought, gee, I mean, like, I was raised a Catholic. I still consider myself a Christian in many ways. My work is an attempt to personalize my own relationship with religion. If anyone has a right to use the symbols of the church, certainly I do.
Now, if artists want to go in a men's room and write dirty words on the wall, let them furnish their own crayons. Let them furnish their own wall, but don't ask the taxpayers to support it.
You know, at first I couldn't believe that people like Jesse Helms and Alphonse D'Amato would take the time to denounce me on the congressional floor. You know, that I would actually be, you know, an entry in the congressional record.
If this goes unrectified, without there being corrective action, these crazies will go further. They'll say, we've got it. This is free speech.
Serrano is a very interesting artist. And he's 40 now, who was, in a way, discovered by much of the world because of the controversy surrounding Piss Christ. He works with the photographic medium. He would not consider himself a photographer per se. He uses the camera to create art. The series from which Piss Christ came was a series that related to bodily fluids of various kinds, interspersed with other imagery. The other bodily fluids series was his so-called cum shot series, in which he photographed his own ejaculations across a black background. More recently, he's done an extraordinary series on the homeless in New York called The Nomads. Another one on the Ku Klux Klan in Georgia. Very, very strong images.
It's not like people are coming to your house and watching a goddamn crucifix down the fucking toilet! It's a picture! I mean, I'm not exactly Joe Artist, as you can tell, but it's contrast. But it's a picture, that's my point. I bet you if the crucifix was in beer, it would be on a fucking billboard.
But when this came to our attention and it became public, we began to get letters from many artists saying, look, if you think that's bad, you just hadn't been around. You haven't discovered anything. You just hang on. Look further, and you'll find, sure enough, offensive stuff.
The Washington Post and the New York Times and other editors, knee-jerk around the country, have picked up the notion that somehow this is censorship. I don't care what these people do on their own time with their own money. But I say to you, Mr. President, when they start saying to the Congress of the United States, butt out, just send the money, this senator says no.
Viva la revolution! Frida Diego, I mean, they're paintings of her own birth and rebirth. They'd be censored in a minute by Jesse Helms today. Her pictures are in the Met.
Roll up, roll up! It's the NEA circus! Come and hit Jesse in the nose! Get yourself an appendage! See if you can score right on the mark, right on his nose, right in his mouth! Get smart! Defend art!
I think that lots of us believe that the stuff that happens in the art world is never going to be seen beyond our neat little elite, well-prepared publics, who in fact are hardly ever offended at anything, except maybe the prices of stuff. But the fact is that it happened, and it set a whole series of events in motion, partly because Reverend Wildman, I believe, was rather rudely treated by the NEA, who in fact acted in a very high-handed manner, as the art world is accused of doing and so often does do. That is, total disregard for the way in which art intentionally challenges values. But when we say, oh, you don't like to have your values challenged, and are surprised that people say, when they say vociferously, no, we're the fools, not they.
I think that Jesse Helms is kind of a dangerous man. The things that I've heard and read, I just hope that his career is short-lived.
Who listens to him anyway? We certainly don't. Look at us now.
I think is sickness masquerading as art. And if you allow the government to endorse that with official tax money, then you're simply aiding and abetting the decline and the decay of your society.
What nonsense. What tripe. 85,000 grants since 1965 to artists, to traveling orchestras, to men and women of sensitivity and creativity.
If we allow anyone to speak up, including Mr. Wildman and his friends, about their viewpoints, we have to allow everyone to speak up about theirs. And inasmuch as I don't particularly want to go to one of their churches or read one of their haranguing newsletters, I don't want to be barred from going to a museum that has information that some of which I might like and some of which I don't. What I think most artists are trying to say has to do with openness. Has to do with sort of recognizing that our culture is full of an immense amount of diversity, and we need to get used to it, and we need to face it, and we need, in fact, to understand it, and perhaps to find some way in our hearts of embracing it. We don't have to be what someone else is, but we have to understand it, and we have to be sympathetic with it.
Get busy. Yeah. You're looking at the funkadelic, psychedelic.
What I think Reverend Wildman represents is a desire to exclude information that doesn't fit the picture, that doesn't serve the values. And that kind of exclusiveness is running counter to what we actually find, I think, essential in understanding how you live in urban cultures, for example.
Now, I guess I'm old-fashioned, but I don't like to talk on the Senate floor about the kind of stuff that has been funded. The taxpayers' money used for it. Like the woman who smeared herself with chocolate and urinated on the stage and invited people to come up and, how to put it delicately, I guess there's no way, to conduct a gynecological examination. Now, that's what I'm talking about, and that's all I'm talking about. That's all I've ever talked about.
Look! Federal money going for photographs of naked men. It's obscene. It's wrong. It's obscene. It's wrong.
It's kind of interesting considering for about 100 years, photographs of naked women have been considered entertainment for naked men. That's different.
It's obscene. It's wrong. Men with penises. Wrong. Look at that damn thing.
What do you prefer they have between their legs, Jesse? Cigarettes?
If you just tell the committee, is it or is it not true?
Just make good art, okay? Not bad, nasty art. And, then everything will be okay, all right? Remember, I know what's right, and I know pornography when I see it.
This committee is here to help keep America just as pure as we possibly.
Well, from that point on, it just began to break open. Mapplethorpe, one man with his. I mean, some of this stuff is so gross you can't describe it in public. You don't want to. One man urinating in another man's mouth, a bullwhip up his rectum, hardcore homosexual acts.
So that's what it's all about.
Good many senators realized what was happening. They spoke to it on the floor of Congress. The media picked up on it, and boom, it exploded.
Garbage such as pictures by Robert Mapplethorpe, a known homosexual who died of AIDS and who spent the last years of his life promoting homosexuality. Now, if any senator doesn't know what I'm talking about, in terms of the art that I have protested, then I'll be glad to show him the pictures. A lot of senators have seen them. And every senator, without exception, has been sickened by what he saw.
The Mapplethorpe photos caused a ripple in the nation's capital when the Corcoran Gallery attempted to show them last year. The gallery ultimately bowed to public pressure, and another museum showed them instead. But they went on to Chicago and Hartford, Connecticut without incident. But when they hit conservative Cincinnati, the law moved in and charged Barry and the Art Center with obscenity and illegal use of a minor in displaying some of Mapplethorpe's photos.
A lot of Americans are uncomfortable with sexuality. It's not pornography, it's sexuality. And when they're confronted with it in any form, they don't know how to deal with it. They're uncomfortable. Or it brings out their worst fears about themselves. I thought it was very interesting that the people who so strongly attacked this show passed around Xeroxes, photocopies of the images among themselves and said, oh, look how terrible it is, but we can look at it.
I have the pictures here. Would you hand them to me, please? Now, any senator who thinks that I'm attacking aesthetic art, I don't know whether the television cameras can see it or not. I'm going to be fast enough with it that they can. But I want senators to come over here, if they have any doubt, and look at the pictures. Don't believe the Washington Post. Don't believe the New York Times. Don't believe any of these other editors who have been so careless with the truth. Come over here and look at the pictures at my desk. I yield the floor.
Oh, boy. Where are these Mapplethorpe photos anyway, folks? Have you seen them? Has the news media seen them? Have they printed them in the newspapers? No. No, we can't read about that. We can't read. We're not of that age. National debate, yes, but we can't see them. Why not? Who says we can't? They contradict our family values. Whose family? My family? Your family? Whose family? The Addams family? The Kennedys? The Rockefellers? The royal family? The Flintstones? Who exactly are they talking about here? You know? That's what kind of gets me, you know, the family values, you know. We can't see them. Well, the news media can show us all sorts of other things. They show us, what's his name, Gaudy's victims in the gutter, right? The blood coming out, right? The guy, front page of the paper. Why can they show us that? I wonder. I don't know. They show us Tiananmen Square. They can show us massacres, right? They can tell us how they can demonize people in the press, right? Demonize Noriega. You gotta demonize him or no one's gonna go along with the invasion. Noriega, he was an alcoholic, he was a drug dealer, he was into prostitution, he was into witchcraft. How do you know? He used to work for us. We have his resume right here. This guy was an asshole. I mean, they can show us that, they can slant elections, they can, you know, promote, you know, they can do that. Why can't they show us these pictures? And who decides, you know?
I'll permit you to pass those around, look at those, and pass them around. There'll be no comments, and there'll be no questions asked by counsel of this witness while you look at those photographs. Just pass them right down the line.
The prosecution said the First Amendment had nothing to do with it. The defense argued the guarantee of free speech had everything to do with it. It was the case against the Cincinnati Contemporary Art Center and its director, Dennis Barry, on obscenity charges for displaying 7 photos by the late Robert Mapplethorpe in an exhibition of his work last spring.
We didn't get complaints from people who saw the exhibition. The complaints came before the exhibition ever came to Cincinnati. It was before the fact, before they even had seen the photos. It was only what the rumors of the photos and what they were told the exhibition was all about. That's where the complaints came from.
Saying there's no sin in Cincinnati drew new breath.
Cincinnati's had for the last 20 years a very active anti-pornography movement.
Adult show, you have to be 18.
They went after legitimate theater and legitimate movies, eventually closing such things as Last Tango in Paris and stopping The Last Temptation of Christ from playing here.
That nobody else has. I stick with my album. I made 2 versions. The First Amendment gave us freedom of speech.
And I do believe that when they looked at the list, when Helms and his buddies, such as the Reverend Donald Wildman and others, looked at the list of where the show was going to go, they saw that in Cincinnati they had a city where they could make a stand and create the issue, because they had in place a number of the leaders that would create the issue here in this city.
Welcome to my courtroom in the Hamilton County Courthouse. My name is David Albanese. I was a presiding judge in the Mapplethorpe trial that took place here in 1990 in September and October. I'd like to take you on a short tour of the courtroom where the trial took place. As you can see, it's a compact courtroom. All of the chairs here in the back were usually occupied by the news media. And during the course of the trial, the defense attorneys and the defendants sat at this portion of the table with the prosecutors and their staff over on this portion of the table. Of course, the witnesses testified from the
State's exhibit
It's
number
very
4.
symmetrical.
State's exhibit number 4,
That's an extremely symmetrical image.
and that's the one where the forearm is up the anus, is that correct?
The forearm is in the very center of the picture.
And what
Leads
are the
to,
formal
leading
values?
again once to the center of the picture, which is very characteristic of his flowers, which often occupy the center of a photograph. And the stamen of the flower will come directly towards the viewer, just the way the forearm of this black man's arm is coming towards the viewer.
And they face directly to where the jury sits across from the judge's bench. And during the course of the trial, the court reporter was able to transcribe all the testimony as it took place in the courtroom. And on this table, we had the exhibits that were introduced in the evidence regarding the alleged...
The five I'm showing you are the ones that were the prosecution's case in Cincinnati. This is one that Mrs. Holmes particularly couldn't understand. And the senator, I don't think, particularly approved of that. But they were not published at the time with any sense of appealing to the prurient tastes of any audience. They were Robert's work at the time. And of course, this is the most valuable of the individual images in the portfolio. It's about $10,000 for an edition of 25, and that's a self-portrait of Robert with a whip.
Let me put it this way. I'm not a great art connoisseur, and I don't know a whole lot about art, but I have visited on several occasions Sistine Chapel. I have been to the Academy in Florence and seen Michelangelo's David. Now, the reason I bring up, for instance, David, is because David is a nude. But it's a magnificent work of art. Now, if you're going to compare David, say David, if you're going to say that the photograph of one man urinating in another man's mouth, or Mapplethorpe with a bullwhip up his rectum is equal to Michelangelo's David, then I say you're sick.
It's incredible. That's not art. A man with his fist up somebody else's anal canal, which could be fatal, by the way, taking a picture of that, or a little girl with her dress just so and no underpants so that the vaginal area becomes the focal point of the photograph. It's not art. It just isn't art. That's child pornography.
We're all ashamed of Jesse and this censorship thing. Our new favorite art critic. I'm assuming you know all about this, and if you don't, well, tough. If Jesse don't like it, then it's probably not art. Jesse knows what's good. Old Jesse is smart. And if you don't like that, don't feel sad. 'Cause the art that you like is probably bad. Grandma Moses, she's okay, never exposes anything, everything's far away, and that statue of David's alright with Jesse. 'Cause Michelangelo gave him such a tiny pee-pee. If Jesse don't like it, it don't stay. Get it out of the museum, get it out of the other. Jesse's favorite painting is the one of the clown.
I saw another one of the photographs. It was a picture of a man with his fist in the anus of another man. Now, to me it might not be art. To you it might not be art. For Maybe to the artist it represents struggle. I don't know, folks. I don't know, but just because I don't know doesn't mean it's not art. I'm not sure. I saw another photograph of Mapplethorpe himself, a self-portrait, a self-photograph, I guess, with a bullwhip in his rectum. Now, to me, that's hilarious. Now, there are a lot of couples going, honey. You know, that's something we haven't tried. It's a photograph. It's a picture. It's not like artists are going around the country inserting bullwhips in unsuspecting people's rectums. I would oppose such a move. But that's how they make it sound. Shut down the Agency for Funds in National Endowment for... Shut it down! Shut it down! As if artists are getting money from the federal government. They're buying bullwhips. They're going down to the beaches of Florida. Look, a shark! It's a photograph. It's a picture.
There were 2 charges against me and 2 charges against the Contemporary Art Center. The 2 charges for both were pandering obscenity and the use of children in nudity-oriented materials with lewd focus on the genitalia and without parental permission. I faced up to a year in jail and $2,000 fine in the Contemporary Art Center. The entity of the Contemporary Art Center faced a $10,000 fine if we were convicted.
Where Bastion's got to go, hey, hey, ho-ho! 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 Where Bastion's got to go!
A number of years ago, people focused their fear on communism and on communists. And so anyone who fell within those realms were victim of that. And then we had the Cold War, and now it's over, so they have to find someone else. And right now, because homosexuals are harbingers of disease, they become a good symbol of that. And Robert, being obviously a gay artist, and his subject matter being that of gay men, is an obvious choice. He's not the only one. It just so happens that he was positioned at a point where a very organized group of people were able to focus their fear onto him.
The man was, I think, from what I've read about him, and I'm not an expert on Robert Mapplethorpe, but I know enough about him to think that he was one of those people who never grew up sexually. He was sexually immature in a lot of different ways, and I think he was trying to get shock value out of those 7 photos. Up yours, Charlie, that sort of thing. I think, does that go over in England, too? They understand that language? Okay.
The dialogue is about whether you should be allowed to address certain issues. And I think that's the Pandora's box that, you know, the bolted door that is so terrifying to people. Because so many people, especially in this culture, refuse. You know, it's a story of denial, and that's one of the most brilliant things about Robert and the attraction to Robert, no matter what you think of his photographs, was that the man was fearless in terms of putting out there in the world images which to him were important to his life and to his creative process. I mean, that was a pretty amazing thing to do, you know?
The work was a documentation of what was happening at that point in time. Robert did know those people. Those poses, those positions, those moments were all real ideas that those people had. Robert would photograph what people did sexually, and this is what they did. On its surface, it would be every mother's nightmare. I never found it sick or evil, but those are my sensibilities.
And of course, the man in the polyester suit, which inspired one of the great quotes in my career as a dealer, because the critic from the Washington Post who saw this at our gallery in 1981 when we did a Mapplethorpe retrospective looked at the image and said to my gallery director, "But what is that large leather pouch?" She didn't like the show.
What I think people miss when they think that Robert Mapplethorpe is making pornography is the fact that his camera looked at a lot of different subjects, and virtually all in the same way. He was very formal, very detached, very clinical, very studied in his approach. He was, there's hardly any spontaneity ever. There's hardly any sort of lifelikeness. They have a quality of being frozen in a moment in time in the way that sculpture does. And I think for that reason, they're about as erotic as diagrams of the body. And this, which is not to say that, you know, your average 8-year-old might not look at a diagram that an anatomically correct person and, in fact, giggle at it. But I think it's that kind of mentality that looks at these things and sees them as pornography.
And then, of course, one of his greatest, to me, greatest single works, Mercury from 1987, platinum on linen, exhibited at the Victorian Albert Museum in February of '88, a value at this point in excess of $150,000.
Robert's public persona was one of great power, bad boy, carefully cultivated, both in the way he dressed and the images he was working with. Robert, the person, was actually incredibly shy, soft-spoken, and gentle person. As a friend, Robert was incredibly generous, you know, giving in that way, you know, taking you along on his trip, where he went, who he saw. A big part of that decision-making process was about career, getting it out there, getting himself out there, getting the work out there. And I guess that's, you know, one of the reasons you live in New York and as a professional artist. And he was very, very, very good at it.
At the end, of course, Robert knew that he was dying of AIDS. Throughout his career, he made a series of self-portraits. This is the last self-portrait in which the agony is very much there in his eyes.
I mean, people are always intrigued by the demise of anything. And, I mean, tell me, I mean, for Robert to do a self-portrait of himself and is, towards the end, completely emaciated, staring right into the camera, holding a death skull on the cane that he needed to walk. He was going to present the image to the end.
Now back here, you'll notice that the jury room is situated right off of the courtroom. The door comes right back from the courtroom to here, and this is where the jury actually deliberated.
The jury took about 2 hours to come up with its decision.
We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn to find the defendant not guilty of peonage, obscenity.
The problem was that these people were not those art aficionados or frequenters of museums. And in their humility, when the opposition, when the defense came in with much credentialed so-called experts who lied through their teeth, in my judgment, with reference to the so-called artistic value of a bullwhip up somebody's rectum or a man urinating in another man's mouth and garbage like that, the poor jury was confused. And the prosecutor's mistake in prudence, in judgment, was he did not put on equally credentialed experts who would have said, this isn't art, it doesn't come close to being art, this is filth.
But it did. Now his trials are over, as well as worries for museum and gallery directors around the country.
we did something very important in this city. We stood up for the First Amendment. Those 8 jurors knew what it was all about. They knew what freedom is all about, and they exercised their rights as individuals, Americans, stood up for that freedom.
It wasn't Robert Mapplethorpe. It wasn't 7 photographs. They were the vehicle for testing freedom of expression. But this is all about freedom of expression in this country. And they can cloak it any way they want to cloak it. They can talk about pornography. They can talk about blasphemy. They can talk about, you know, political views that are unacceptable. In reality, it's freedom of expression. You know, and are we going to have a country that guarantees freedom of expression and access to that expression? That's what the trial was all about.
If you are a Christian, you've got to live it. You've got to, it's not something that you go to church and say a prayer and go home. In my mind, that's hypocrisy.
So what is your task?
To be faithful in that job which I feel like God has called me.
What is that job?
To deal with some of the filth in our society today. To try to change some of the trends I see, some of the immorality, some of the cheapness of human life that I see portrayed in the media.
You're in control, just like a child. Heaven help me.
From time to time, we spent $2 to $3 million promoting boycott. Most of the time, $200,000 will take care of it.
I wanna take you there.
Madonna is very anti-Christian. She had a video simulating having intercourse with the symbolic figure for Christ. There's nothing there except sensuality. That's all she's selling, plus the anti-Christian bigotry. Pepsi had a $10 million contract. We talked with them, told them who we were and where we were coming from. We told them who Madonna was and what she stood for. The contract was never signed. The deal was canceled.
Go ahead. Make a wish.
I always try moral persuasion first. If it doesn't work, economic persuasion. Our philosophy, as far as television, for instance, let the network show what they want to show. The advertiser sponsor what he wants to sponsor. Viewer watch what he wants to watch, and the consumer buy what he wants to buy. If you don't like what the fellow's doing, the business is doing, don't buy his products. That's as American as apple pie. If he supports your values, buy his products. If he supports values that you find detrimental, don't buy his products. As American as apple pie, legal as the day is long, moral as the world is round. When The Last Temptation of Christ came out, we asked people to boycott theaters that showed the movie. Out of 13,000 theaters, less than 1% showed the movie.
But none of those who took part in the massive demonstration have seen the film. And since they are urging a boycott, they are not likely to see it. Those addressing the crowd declared that the filmmakers may have triggered a backlash.
They are unleashing a movement. And the movement says this: Christian bashing is over.
Industry officials now are waiting to see whether the impact of this demonstration will spread as the film opens today in 9 premier cities.
Universal Studios lost $14,268,000 on the movie. I mean, they didn't make another one. The Southland Corporation, 7-Eleven, we boycotted them for 2 years. They pulled the porn magazines out of all their corporately owned stores. Playboy Penthouse circulation went down about 25 to 30%.
What do we get for $10? Everything you want. Everything? Everything. Oh.
Don't do that, baby.
Oh.
What gonna do?
Suck it to me. Oh.
Playboy is so obviously mainstream American culture and entertainment that it's hard to find a lot of people who find the magazine stepping over the boundaries of what is good taste or what is acceptable.
Yeah. Okay, great. So that week is not, that's just too much.
The Wildman type groups succeed by pretending they have more power in the marketplace than they really do, and that's how they create fear on the part of companies that they approach. And one of the things that it's important to do is to strip away that, and why you have to address and attack their rhetoric you need to also understand that they're a fringe group, and I think that they're going to be increasingly perceived as a fringe group. Wildman doesn't want to engage in a debate of marketplace ideas. Wildman wants to remove from the marketplace the ideas he doesn't like, and that's a very anti-American attitude.
I'm saying, look, let's put it out in the marketplace. You make your case, I make my case. I'm willing to take the end result. They say, no, that's not fair. You can influence people, you know. You have influence because you don't buy their products, and they don't want controversy and any number of other things. I'm saying that's the same thing you've been doing for years. What's wrong with me doing it? Well, the thing that's wrong is that I happen to come from a different political and philosophical philosophy. And that's really what's wrong with me, is that they don't agree with my religious convictions. I'm applying them the same way they are. I'm doing identically the same thing that the liberals are doing. But the problem is I'm being successful, and they don't like that.
Yeah, and some of the acceptable obscenities in life, some of the acceptable obscenities, things we just take for granted, you know? I mean, they're making a big thing about the Playboy magazine. Now, 3 years ago, I was down in Florida. I went into a 7-Eleven to get a Playboy magazine for the other comedians. So I walked in. I said, excuse me, miss, but where are the Playboy magazines? We're sorry, sir. We no longer carry Playboy here at 7-Eleven. We don't feel that the Playboy magazine is an accurate representation of the values and the morals of the 7-Eleven chain. Excuse me. What could I possibly get to read in this great temple of learning? Oh, enlightened one. I, this ignorant castaway on the sea of darkness, who by God's grace have drifted into the aura of your great moral light. Our magazines are over there, sir. So I go to see what they have to read in the literary section of the 7-Eleven. Past the great works of the day, Tractor Pull, May, June, July, Professional Wrestling, the History of. And there are all these military magazines. Guns and Ammo, Gung Ho, Soldier of Fortune, different ways to kill people you haven't met yet. This is a real nice message to the children, isn't it? What is the message here? The message here is, all right, listen, kids, if you take your clothes off voluntarily in front of a camera, that's immoral. Shame, shame, shame. However, if a perfect stranger were to blow them off with a rocket launcher, well, something to teach the children.
Mr. Wildman, greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. May this letter find you in good health and also enjoying the many other blessings of God. Thank you for doing what you do and giving me an opportunity to write and unite with others to fight pornography. Pornography was always in my life on the outside. Remember now that he's in the pen. In fact, some of my earliest childhood memories are of reading Playboy, Hustler, and Penthouse. I became addicted to pornography before I was in my teens. To make a long story short, I am currently serving a 100-year murder sentence, and pornography was involved.
But no, this shouldn't be a problem.
This is what the feminist anti-pornography movement has been pointing to and saying the people that are paying the price for this concept of First Amendment freedoms are women. And we are not willing to pay that price. We are saying that pornography is not about speech. It is about oppression. It is about subordination. It is about profiting off of the selling and buying of abused, lesser privileged women and often children.
It's a great lie of people who advocate censorship that they're going to solve social problems by repressing access to images and ideas. They have no examples in history to make their case. Quite the contrary. One looks at societies like the Soviet Union that have been closed societies, not only about sexual images, but about political dissent for, decades. And if anything, we are now celebrating the opening up of that society rather than celebrating the closed walls of that society. A lot of the debate about censorship, I think, is particularly unfortunate because it takes away energy from discussing the real social problems for which there are solutions. And if all the money that was raised to promulgate these organizations who don't like the National Endowment for the Arts, or television shows that deal with adolescent sexuality, or magazines that have nudity in advertising or editorial, was raised instead for better sex education, better available interceptions for families that have violence in their families, better treatment for runaway kids, we actually would live in a healthier, happier society. But those are complex solutions.
Then there's the issue of thong bikinis. Bikinis that show too much are now banned from beaches run by the state of Florida or the city of Sarasota. In a four-county area near Daytona Beach, State's Attorney John Tanner makes mileage out of his campaign to take X-rated videos off store shelves.
The decent people are going to demand the laws be enforced and the pornographers have got to go.
The defendant is not guilty.
The two-week trial of the Two Live crew ended after just 2 hours of deliberation by a Broward County jury. The not guilty verdict marked the group's first courtroom victory in an ongoing battle over their lyrics.
Yo soy Juanita, pero no soy suertecita. ¿Tú crees que porque estoy vestida así, soy una puta? Oye, yo vengo de una familia muy católica. No, mijito, yo no mamo ninguna pinga.
I bumped into her at the Coco Cabana.
I'm Charles Freeman, owner, operator of EC Records in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm the only record store owner convicted of a misdemeanor selling As Nasty As They Wanna Be, Two Live Crew, third album in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on June 8th, 1990. I was arrested by BSO undercover officers after they had purchased the album and cassette on Two Live Crew. And of course, most of you probably know by now that this is the album that I sold and had been selling for approximately 10 months prior to my arrest.
No, it's sweeter. Okay, Juanita, now I must be your guy. She said Juanita's my nickname. Call me Spanish Fly.
Bueno, tal vez te pueda hacer el favor, pero solo si tú me mamas la chocha. Y después,
Last Friday, a Broward County record store owner was arrested for selling the album to undercover detectives. And on Sunday morning, after what was billed as an adult-only performance at a Hollywood, Florida nightclub, Two Live Crew members Luther Campbell and Chris Wong were arrested. Fans on the streets and in the stores reacted the same way.
Freedom of speech!
Because of the nationwide publicity, Nasty As They Wanna Be has sold 1 million copies, and with every court case, sales increase even more.
In Florida. Florida. Just gets a laugh just saying it. Florida. Which one's mine? Is this one mine? This one? Florida. Anybody in Florida can get a gun. Literally, anybody can get a gun. And you know where the guns end up? Here! You know? It's like, everyone knows, well, that's the state that initially banned Two Live Crew's music as being obscene, you know? It's the same state where a convicted felon legally walked into a gun shop, bought an automatic weapon, snapped, wiped out 11 people. What do they close? The record stores. Now, folks, I'm not a big fan of obscenity or swearing during rock or rap music. When was the last time anybody in this country died from, like, an obscenity to the upper torso, you know? Suck my dick! Ah! We've got the body right here, Captain. Apparently he was hit with a sexual innuendo to the chest. I mean, the real obscenity is some of the neighborhoods those kids come from, you know? Maybe they should outlaw ghettos. Didn't mean to bum you out. You know, but that's the real obscenity, you know? Not the sounds that come out of the neighborhood, it's the neighborhood itself. When they're talking about sex and drugs and violence, well, what do you fucking expect them to talk about? Skiing? We were on the slopes the other day. A lot of slopes in Miami.
Luther Campbell, lead rapper of the Two Live Crew, has announced the release of the group's next album. It will be in mid-September, and he's promised it will be even more nasty than their last LP. Well, in our People in the News segment today, we'll focus on Luther, who was once known as Luke Skywalker. Is he a man or a myth?
I figured like I was singled out, you know, and I was, and the reason why I was being singled out was because I was a black-owned company, and I owned my own company, and it was a black group.
Tonight, we'll reveal the results from our poll concerning the 2 Live Crew's efforts to sell their 2 Live Martinez to the Spanish
Luke Records. Okay, we sell t-shirts, sweetie, but it has to be on Monday, and you have to speak to Anna. All righty? Okay, bye-bye. You know, they call and it's like, hi, may I speak to Luke? Like, they're personal friends. Like, he's really going to speak to him. He doesn't have time anymore. You know, he used to be able to take the phone calls from fans, but, you know, it's gotten out of hand, and he's not able to do those things.
What happened?
Success.
Now put it in the ball!
There's only one way to have a good time. Fuck that pussy and make it mine. Lay a bitch on the bed, flat on her back. Hold her legs up high, make the pussy splack. You can put her in the bug by sitting on a sink. Wrap her legs right now, take this dick.
But there was a lot of violence against women in 2 Live Crew, which comes straight out of pornography. As a matter of fact, I did a television show recently where they showed an interview with one of the speakers or singers in 2 Live Crew, and he stated, he made the connection was very clear for him. He said that his music was designed to be enjoyed just the way Playboy is being enjoyed.
They've had 2 more murders, you know, shootings at least, and they've had something like 127 felonies committed on the site in the last 6 months. Everywhere Luther goes, the maggots come by for obvious reasons. He's rotting meat from a moral standpoint. Totally untalented slot.
Big time First Amendment issue. This is the first issue that actually tested the First Amendment, what people did, you know, people who didn't know what was actually going on was thinking like, yeah, you know, ban them, you know, you can't just say that.
I took a precaution that nobody else has. I stick with my album. I made 2 versions, and I still got these clowns right up.
The First Amendment gave us freedom of speech. So what you're saying, it didn't include me? I like to party and have a good time. There's nothing but pleasure written in our rhyme.
After a while, the cops are going to have a right to come in our house, you know, and tell us what we can say and what we can't say. I mean, you know, that's going to take away the freedom of this country.
This is the 90s and we're coming on strong, saying things and doing things that you're saying's wrong. Wising up, because on election day, we'll see who's banned in the USA.
Luther Campbell, in my opinion, is a very clever fellow, utterly stupid, untalented, no creativity whatsoever. They couldn't care less about the First Amendment. It's of no interest to them whatsoever. All they care about is making money by playing dirty music, or not music, lyrics. The music isn't dirty, it's non-existent. But the lyrics are dirty, and that's their intent. And they were laughing up their sleeves at the pseudo-liberals, the bleeding hearts, who were coming to their defense, because all they care about is what they cart off to the bank.
I'm from a place where at night at 11 o'clock, you hear shootings. You hear babies crying. You hear people getting beat up. You see mothers and fathers fighting on Friday. You see drunk people, you know, every day walking around. You see homeless people. You know, that's where I'm from. You know, I can't hide it. Now, some people may say, oh, that's obscene, or what he's talking about, which it is obscene. That's obscene. You know, it is, but nobody in this government has picked up a pen or picked up anything to go and straighten that terrible picture out. See, it's a mirror, and in that mirror, I'm a reflection of what's in the mirror. But if you want to clean the mirror up, and you don't want me talking about what I'm talking about anymore, then go clean up where I'm from.
When I started AFA, I lived in a suburb of Memphis, and moved back here so that my children could grow up in a smaller community. I really didn't want them to grow up in a larger community like that.
What is Tupelo most famous for?
It is the birthplace of Elvis Presley. I liked the man, and I liked his music. I was his contemporary, so to speak. He was a couple of years older than I was.
What about all the sex at the beginning of his career?
I really, to be honest with you, didn't see any of the sex at the beginning of his career. I saw a man who had charisma, who had some sensuality maybe, but I did not see it as exploiting sex as many of the media stars do today, and as much of the media do today.
I have another song here, friends, that we hope you like. It's called Heartbreak Hotel. Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell. Well, it's down at the
Let's see, right over the crest. See the top of it between those trees. Right here on the right. There is the birthplace of Elvis. They go to Graceland first in Memphis, and then they come to Elvis's birthplace here.
I think on the one hand, you have artists sort of wanting to deal with real issues in real life, and at the same time, you see a lot of people who would prefer that the world had never changed from what they perceive to have been a wonderful golden age of fathers loving mothers and mothers loving back and everybody taking care of their 2.6 children and living happily ever after in sort of houses in the country. Whether that world ever existed is, of course, a good question. But it doesn't exist for artists anymore, and a lot of people, nevertheless, want to retrieve it.
We've had some come to tell us they were Elvis, you know. We've had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm glad I got to talk to you. Bye-bye.
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 If I had my druthers, I'd rather get up and walk away. I'd rather not be involved. But my Christian commitment says, as long as I'm convinced that this is where he does want me and what he wants me to do, then I'm going to stay here. And are we going to win? I don't know. I just really don't know. Sometimes I doubt it. But the Lord doesn't require me that I be successful. That's the difference in the value systems. The world says you got to be successful, you got to be number one. I don't have to be successful, I don't have to be number one. The Lord only requires of me that I be faithful, period. So whether or not we'll be successful or not remains to be seen. I won't know in my lifetime.
I mean, the way I look at it, if you don't like Two Live Crew's music, don't go see it. I mean, don't buy the album. You don't like the Mapplethorpe photos? Don't go see the display. It's as simple as that. You don't got a bullwhip in your rectum, you got nothing to worry about. Bush is talking about a new order. Well, look at the Ayatollah. See, the weapons aren't always that effective because you can't always change people's, minds with them, and that's what we really have to do, I think, on the planet on a broader terms, change people's mind, not just their behavior. But, you look at all the weapons. The Ayatollah took our hostages. He wasn't afraid of nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, planes, tanks, aircraft carriers, none of that stuff. As a matter of fact, the only thing the Ayatollah was ever afraid of was Salman Rushdie's book. We should be building bigger and better books, he said. That's what we need in this country. Anyway, so from time to time, I end up telling these people these jokes, and people yell, "Come on, tell a joke! Jesus Christ! What is this, firing line? Come on, Jesus! Tell a joke, I don't want the issues. If I want to hear the news, I would have stayed home." So I tell them, knock, knock. Who's there? Rita. Rita who? Read a newspaper, maybe you know what the hell I'm talking about. Hey, folks. I'd just like to say to you folks, thank you very much for coming out tonight. And if anybody here didn't like it and anybody home watching television didn't like it, do me a big, big favor, will you please? Please, try to get me censored. I really need the exposure. Thank you very much.
What is this? Is this not America? This is not China. This is not Russia. This is not the place where they brought down the walls. This is America. We have the right to say what we want to say. We have the right to do what we want to do. And what I do in my house, you might not do in your house. So what I do in my house is my business. And the simple fact of it all is that we are bonded by the First Amendment. We have the freedom of expression. We have the freedom of choice. And you, Chinese, black, green, purple, Jew, you have the right to listen to whoever you want to, and even the Two Live Crew. Two Live Crew. So all you right-wingers, left-wingers, bigots, communists, there is a place for you in this world, because this is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and Two Live is what we are.